If you know action movies, you absolutely know the name John Woo. He's the guy who basically invented gun fu, taking the classic gangster film and turning it into this beautiful, balletic symphony of destruction. His fingerprints are all over modern action. But today, we're going to look past the slow-motion dives and the twin pistols, because we're asking a much bigger question about what's really going on in his films. And look, this comes straight from the man himself. This quote is everything. While we're watching these spectacular shootouts, Woo is telling us his real mission is about things like justice, loyalty, and family, values he felt the world was losing. So that tells you right away, the violence isn't just for show, it's how he explores these incredibly deep human ideas. All right, so before we get to the heart of his philosophy, let's do a quick refresher on what makes a John Woo film a John Woo film. I mean, he is the undisputed master of mayhem, after all. And you see, none of this stuff is random, right? It all fits together. That gun fu isn't just there to look cool. It's a physical expression of the intense bonds of brotherhood. The slow motion isn't just for style points. It makes us really zero in on the impossible choices these complex heroes are facing. And those doves and churches, oh, they are not just background decoration. They're super important symbols, and we are definitely coming back to them. Okay, so all of this leads us to the big question, the one we're really digging into today. This explainer is based on some fascinating research by Meng-Shu Wang at Waseda University, and it poses a really interesting question when you peel back all those layers of action. So here it is, the core of our investigation. Is this idea of justice in his movies, this powerful, personal need to right a wrong, is that something that's deeply rooted in his Hong Kong background? Or is he tapping into something that connects with all of us, no matter where we live or who we are? Now, to even begin to answer that, we first have to be clear on what we mean by moral justice. See, there's a huge difference here. Legal justice, that's the stuff you see on paper. Laws, police, courtrooms. But moral justice, that's personal. It's about your own code, about fixing a broken friendship or getting payback for a betrayal. It's what feels right, even if the law says it's wrong. And that exact conflict? Well, that's the engine that powers pretty much every single John Woo movie. So, how does he actually show this on screen? Well, it all starts with the very DNA of his stories. They follow a specific formula that is all about one thing: relationships. So, almost every John Woo movie follows this kind of rhythm. First, you've got your equilibrium, a stable world, right? A brotherhood of gangsters, a partnership between pilots, everything's cool. Then comes the disruption. And this is the key. It's not just a crime, it's a betrayal. It's something that shatters those personal bonds. And the entire rest of the movie is about the hero trying to put the pieces back together, often through a whole lot of violence, to create a new kind of justice. And what's fascinating is you can see him adapt the same formula for different audiences. In his Hong Kong masterpiece, A Better Tomorrow, one man's betrayal sends shockwaves through the entire brotherhood. Justice is about restoring honor to the group. Then you jump ahead a decade to his Hollywood film Broken Arrow. The focus gets way tighter. It's one hero against his traitorous partner. Justice becomes this mix of personal revenge and doing your job. The cultural wrapper is different, but the core idea, getting justice for a broken bond, is exactly the same. Okay, so the stories are universal, but what about the people in them? This is where it gets really interesting, because in Woo's world, the lines between good guy and bad guy are, well, they're incredibly blurry. Seriously, think about it for a second. Who's the real hero in his films? Is it the cop who's willing to break every rule in the book? Or is it the killer who lives by an unbreakable moral code? Woo loves to put his characters in this gray area where those labels just don't stick. Let's take Ah Jong from The Killer. I mean, on paper, he's the bad guy, right? He's a hitman. But then, he accidentally blinds a singer during a job and his whole world shifts. He feels this immense guilt and dedicates himself to protecting her, showing this deep compassion that has nothing to do with his profession. His personal moral code is just stronger than the law. And then you've got the cop, Li Ying, who's supposed to be our hero. He spends the whole movie hunting Ah Jung, but by the end, he respects the hitman's code so much that when Ah Jung is killed, Li Ying just throws away his badge. He chooses moral justice over legal justice and goes after the bad guys himself. The cop literally becomes the Avenger. And you can kind of visualize it like this. The hero and the villain, they're not on opposite sides of the circle. They overlap. A huge chunk of what they do is almost identical, and they often operate from a shared sense of honor even when they're trying to kill each other. The real fight isn't just good versus evil. It's about these two complicated moral codes smashing into one another. And then, of course, you have Face Off, which just takes this idea and makes it completely literal. It's not a metaphor anymore. FBI agent Sean Archer doesn't just act like the terrorist Castor Troy. He wears his face. He has to become his enemy to get justice for his family, blurring that line between good and evil until you have to ask yourself, who's the good guy now? All right, so we've seen it in his stories, we've seen it in his characters, but Woo uses his camera to slam this point home. This is where he gives his final verdict on this whole idea of moral justice. Think about the pure irony he puts on screen. You've got these insane, chaotic gunfights, and what flies through them? White doves, a symbol of peace right in the middle of all that chaos. He stages his most incredible shootouts in churches, places of sanctuary and safety. He's visually screaming at us that things like peace and violence, good and evil, they aren't separate. They're tangled together. And sometimes, the only path to a higher moral purpose is through destruction. So what's the big takeaway here? The research really points to one conclusion. What John Woo is tapping into isn't just a Hong Kong thing. The powerful emotions he puts on screen, that sting of betrayal, that need to protect someone who's innocent, that struggle to figure out what's right, that's just human stuff. We can all understand that. And that's his genius, really. He's a kind of translator. He takes these huge ethical questions that we all grapple with and puts them in different packages. A Hong Kong gangster flick one year, a Hollywood blockbuster the next. The settings change, the accents change, but the heart of the story, that painful search for personal justice in a world of broken trust, that stays powerfully and universally the same. So that really leaves us with one final nagging question, doesn't it? John Woo's films trap his characters in this moral gray zone. And watching them, we're forced to wonder the same thing about our own world. When the official rules fail, and all you have left is your own moral compass, who actually gets to decide what's just?